We have Pod coming over and joining us in a little bit. I just want to take a minute and thank everyone who's joining us here today, as well as those who are joining us live. Welcome to the White House. My name is Mohamed, and I'm here with the Office of Public Engagement. Most importantly, though, I do want to thank and congratulate our champions who are here with us today, and if I can ask them to stand up really quickly so we can acknowledge them. We've heard the president say it time and time again. You're more than welcome to have a seat if you want. We've heard the president say it time and time again that the best ideas don't come from Washington, but almost always outside of Washington. And that's why our office, the Office of Public Engagement, serves as the front door to the White House, where we can not only acknowledge and spotlight the work that's happening every day, but also bring everyone together to share their ideas, to share their common interest. And most of the times, many of you have never met. So our hope is that we can have you all come together and work together and share your ideas to not only improve the situation in your communities, but also communities across the nation, even after today. As we all know, that every problem that requires a solution will require leadership, vision, and a collaboration across federal and state and local levels. It really requires lifting up the stories and the work that people like the champions here today are doing to not only work to build a safer America in the face of national tragedies and natural disasters, which is also a goal that the president has made a priority through the release of the Climate Action Plan and in directing FEMA to launch a comprehensive campaign to build and sustain national preparedness among Americans from all backgrounds, which you'll be hearing some examples of from our champions. So with that, I'd like to encourage everyone joining us today to share their experience, but also help lift the stories of the incredible champions who are here today through your social media sites using hashtag WHChamps. You can also visit our champions website on whitehouse.gov, where you'll be able to read their bios and their blogs, which will go up later today. And with that, I know we are eager to hear from our champions. I'd like to introduce to you someone who shares the same passion and enthusiasm for your work as the president, but also, most importantly, was the former Director of Individual and Community Preparedness at FEMA, our Deputy Assistant to the President and Director of Public Engagement, Paulette Anaskoff.
What a nice surprise. I knew I would see a lot of familiar faces here. Thank you, Romana, for the introduction, and thank you all for coming here. Welcome to the White House. I want to thank you so much for being here, and I definitely want to congratulate the champions. A lot of you are people I've tracked for quite some time, and it is so great to have you here, so welcome. As Romana mentioned, I started working as the Director of Individual and Community Preparedness for 3 years before this job, which I started back in March. And my team, a lot of them I'm sure here today. Hi, everybody. We're working every day to make sure that we are promoting effective disaster planning and preparedness through programs like Citizen Corps and CERT and the policy efforts that they undertake. And this work, and I learned it myself, is very hard. And I know that you all do it because you love it, and it takes a certain kind of passion to be really into preparedness, I think. We've got so many people with busy lives, so many people who push it aside for something else, and our goal is to break through and make sure it really becomes a part of their daily life and part of their mindset. So why are we here today, and why does the White House want to make sure your work specifically is recognized? And I will tell you, we get a lot of ideas. You guys get a little extra bump because this is an issue that I particularly love, so we want to make sure that we've got it to highlight, certainly. But the president has really prioritized two things that you all represent so perfectly. One is that the president understands just how important community resilience is, and he's gotten a chance to take a lot of trips with Craig and see it firsthand, wanting to make sure that folks are prepared and responding and recovering as a community. With natural disasters on the rise, with climate change, there's definitely no expectation, I think, that any of us have, that the need for a resilient community is going to go away anytime soon. And the president has laid out a very specific policy agenda around preparedness, Presidential Policy Directive 8, as well as a climate action plan. and you all represent those so well. The President's Climate Action Plan, which he released last month, focuses on partnering with communities to prepare for the impacts of climate change. And policy is important, and it helps us set out a plan, which is what we need. But what we hope to highlight and what we hope to get to is the people who are really doing the hands-on work in the field and making sure we're highlighting them and sharing those stories amongst each other. I have been a community organizer since I got out of college. It's all I've ever wanted to do is organize people to do things. And if there's one thing that I took from my time organizing people, it is that the greatest work and the best ideas always come from the local level. And I think folks here have direct hands-on experience with that. When everyone works together and takes action on their own ideas, amazing things can happen, and we've gotten to see that in a lot of ways over the past few years. So we hope to encourage others to do what you all have done. That's why we're highlighting you here today. We want to make sure that folks are encouraged to collaborate in their communities, to create effective and creative communication strategies, to get to folks who don't often hear from government, and to plan for others when they are not able to. I want to thank you for taking the initiative that you've shown in your communities. For those folks in the audience who are not champions and the folks who are on the live stream, I want to make sure, particularly if you were moved or inspired by the champions, which I know you will be when you hear a little more about them, find ways to support their work in your community by making sure you get the word out from social media, but more importantly, that you get involved on a local level in becoming a part of a resilient community. I now have the great pleasure of introducing someone that is known for making change happen at a lot of levels, my former boss, FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate. And happy National Preparedness Month.
When you talk about preparedness, it means a lot of different things to a lot of people. You talk about resilience. And it's almost like when you talk to your family or you talk to your friends, and they're like, well, what are you talking about, resilience? What's that got to do with anything? And so when you talk about disasters, how many people have heard this term, a 100-year event? Yeah, it's a 100-year event. And some people literally think that means that it will only happen once every 100 years. And our partners at the Weather Service and others are struggling. How do you communicate risk? How many times have you heard this? I've lived here all my life. It will never, they don't know what they're talking about. And then I'm there a year later, and they're going, you never told me it would ever be this bad. And we talk about first responders, and they're great. I used to be one. And they have an important job, but when you saw those images of the tornadoes that struck this year, the year before, and you listen, you start talking to people, you know who did most of the rescuing? The neighbors. First on the scene. The president was walking down in Joplin, and there's a gentleman standing there, and I now know it's a Chevy. I thought it was a Ford, but it's a Chevy pickup truck, 1950s model, almost like a robin blue. And this gentleman was standing out in what was the front steps of his house. That was all that's about left, the porch and front steps. He had his American flag, and the president went up and introduced him and was asking him about his experience. And were you here when it happened? He said, well, yes, I was here. The warnings were going, the sirens were going off. I knew I don't have a basement, so I knew I had to go into my I went into my bathroom, and the president said, well, what happened? He said, well, it got real loud, and things started coming down. I wasn't sure it was, I was going to make it, and then it stopped, and I opened the door, and I walked into what was left of my living room and looked around, and I didn't recognize anything. He stepped off the steps, and the president said, what did you do then? Well, he said, well, people were hollering across the street. There was people trapped, so I went over and started digging people out. Well, that would have been one story. Okay, we went to another, and the president starts talking to somebody else. Well, what happened? And similar story. I went and got to my safe room, or I got in my basement, and when the storm went through, what'd you do? Well, I got out, and there was people heard are people, and they started helping. And so I never really understood in government why it was almost as if we told people, remember, if you're cops and firefighters, remember this, guys? The first thing we're taught, get scene control, get the bystanders back, right? Right? Got to push people back. Why? Well, they don't know what they're doing. They're not trained. And it was almost this bias that we became more and more what I call government-centric, that government was going to have the answers and government was going to respond to disasters. And it's a reinforcing luxury that in small events, we're actually pretty good at it. But what we started finding in these larger, more complex events, that we had actually pushed the public away. We said, you're not trained, stay back. Let the professionals do it. We treated the public like you were the victims. And somebody was going to come in and take care of you, which actually, if you're a caregiver, is actually a very rewarding feeling that I can take care of people. And we kind of lost this idea that, you know, maybe the public's not a liability, they're actually a resource. And maybe we should stop running in with this idea that we got to push everybody back because they're not trained and go, they're already there. Why aren't we engaging them? Not after a disaster happens, and not at some hyper-theoretical goal that it's going to have to be a catastrophic disaster before you get there, but day to day, why aren't we engaging the community? Why aren't we engaging the people there going, hey, look, you're going to have a response in this. You're going to have impacts from this. This is what could happen in your community, and this is how you can be better prepared. Well, that's still a hard message to sign because, you know, our response, we're government, so what do we come up with? A checklist. You ever see our checklists? Have you ever shopped our recommended supplies at one time? You know? And so as government, you know, we come in here like, oh, yeah, here's a form, here's a checklist, this is all the stuff you're supposed to do, this is your plan, and most families are going, I'm just trying to get through the day or figure out what I'm going to put on the table. Much less do I have time to go through all this stuff. You heard an award about several recipients, the John Solomon Award. And when you do awards after people, if you didn't know them, you kind of wonder, what's the significance of that award? Well, John was just like you. He had a career, he had a family. Preparedness was not a passion. He didn't really, it was like, he's a New Yorker. They just deal with it. It's just like everyday stuff happens in New York until September 11th happened. And for a lot of people, it's one of those moments. I'm old enough that I can tell you when those moments were. I know where I was a child when President Kennedy was assassinated. I know where I was when the shuttle blew up. And I know where I was when the first plane hit the tower and I got the call that something was going on. And in the aftermath of that, John started looking at what happened, and it was almost this sense that there's got to be more I can do. And he started putting together these ideas, and he started this blog, In Case of Emergency Of. And it was really about his journey of looking at how a person needs to be more responsible and take on preparedness, but also looked at what government was doing and going, you know, you're saying this, I'm experiencing this, and there's mismatches here. And so it was always this refreshing review, somewhat at times critical, but not critical in the way of just criticizing, but critical in the way of, I have ideas that I think would do better. And it was this interesting debate. Well, I'm down in Florida at the time. John's up in New York blogging. We had never met. But we actually started carrying on a conversation back and forth through tweets and blogs, so they're never directly speaking to each other. And as Paulette says, these ideas were coming from a layperson, a non-professional, a person who was a career person in his own right doing something else, but was taking the ideas and concepts of resiliency and preparedness and articulating them in a way that had an insight that the groupthink of all of us that had been doing it forever never would have gotten to. And when I came to FEMA, I pretty much told a lot of our folks that you need to be following this blog and you need to be looking at what John's writing about. And even if you don't agree with him, you need to read it. because he's got a point of view. And one of the things that John pointed out that I took to heart is we tend to hit you with being prepared is you got to do everything right now to all this stuff or you're not going to be ready. And John kind of pointed out, you know, that's like too much at one time and you're losing people. You need to bring this down and put it into the context of day-to-day stuff and give them the steps into it. Not just sit there and go, here, there's a list and go do it, you're prepared. And it taught me a lot about this tendency that people don't like to be told you're not always going to be right or your answers aren't always going to be the right answers. And John created a safety zone where he could say things about programs in a way that people realized he wanted you to succeed. He didn't just want to tear you down or be critical. He wanted you to succeed, but he had ideas. And from that, when we did this, we created this award in recognizing John. His family's here, his brother, his mom's here. I've had the opportunity to meet many times with the family. They now do a scholarship program where they do fellows programs with the city of New York in John's honor. We lost John, but the blog is still there. There's now more and more people that have embraced what John started, and the preparedness continues. Not unlike what many of you have done in your communities. And I think the reoccurring theme you hear a lot about, and you know, in Washington we get bureaucratic speak, and I've been up here long enough, I'm pretty sure I've already been infected with it. And you know, you get all the inside the beltway and one size fits all, and it's really seductive that when you're in Washington to come up with solutions to problems that you think are brilliant, and then you try to apply them to the 50 states, the territories, the tribal governments, and we're always doing government, right? Do you really think of where you live as a government place or your neighborhood? But we look at everything around government. And so this is really our opportunity to go and embrace what John was trying to teach us. Disasters aren't about what happens to governments. Disasters are what happens to communities, to neighbors, to families. And this idea that one size fits all means if there was one perfect answer, there should only be one person being recognized, right? There isn't. And the answer for one community may not work in another community. And this idea that you got to have passion and you got to embrace this, because quite honestly, unless people perceive the threat, you know in your own lives, how easy is it to get people to talk about preparedness? It's like trying to sell life insurance to somebody who's thinking, I don't want to talk about I'm dying. You know, it's almost like you're trying to start conversations, and most of your friends and family look at you going, yeah, this is really kind of strange conversation. Let's talk football. That's safe. Or let's talk weather. Well, football depends. I mean, that may not be safe depending on what team you're for. But, you know, people, they don't want to talk about this because it's like, I don't want to talk about disasters. But you do it anyway. And we know this. Even if you do nothing else but get people to think about what they may need to do, you just increase their chance of survival. It's sometimes the smallest steps that give us the greatest return. And so it's not always just what you have done. It's your passion. It's the fact that these are things you think about and you talk to people about. And all we really need to do in many cases is just get people in a very busy, confusing world with everything going on and all the information overload, just to take a few moments and go, if it happened, what are we going to do? What is our plan? How would we communicate? And just the thought of the steps of thinking through that will save lives. So not only in recognition of the projects, the teams, and the capabilities you built, it's your passion to continue to talk about this, even when it may be a little bit uncomfortable, just to get people to take that one little extra step and think about what could happen and what they would do. And then be prepared when they go, well, what would I do to have the information and have those next steps? So you can think of yourselves as champions of change, or as my derogatory remark, you're like a used car salesman trying to get them on the lot. You can't make a sale if you can't get them on the lot. You need to get them on the lot so we can close the deal. because resiliency in communities will only be tied to the resiliency of our communities, not just to government institutions. And disasters don't always give us warning, and they don't care about our past history, and they really, really have nothing to do with how long I've lived anywhere. And when they happen, you got to be able to act. So we thank you for everything you do. We thank you for being those agents of change. Continue your job. We build resilience one family at a time. Thank you.
First field, come on up.
It's gotta look sharp or what? It's live, man. You got your friends watching.
You settle? Everybody here? Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Just wanted to take a moment. I'm Rich Serino. I'm the Deputy Administrator of FEMA. And now want to really have a discussion about some of the great things that this group of people have done. You heard Craig talk about how important this is and how we have to get people motivated. And quite often, as some of you may have heard me say in the past, all disasters are local. Federal government is going to come in, we're going to help out, but it's really about what goes on at the local level. That the work that you do, the work that you have done, has made a difference in people's lives. If you think about it, and I read a little bit about everybody here and the work that you've done, you have made a difference in people's lives. You have. Not many people get to do that, but you have. So for that, I say thank you. Thank you for what you've done. And thank you for what your teams have done and what the community has done, because you have made a difference. As we go throughout, I'm going to try and keep this, your initial comments to 2 to 3 minutes, shorter the better. And then if we have the opportunity, really want to get into a discussion and really, share some of the ideas and get into some of the things that, something in Los Angeles that worked that maybe could be helpful in Hoboken, that could perhaps be helpful in New York, that maybe something in Texas could help out. So I think that as we can share these, I think it'll be very helpful. There was a couple of references to football, and I usually make a reference to baseball. But go who?
Cards.
Cards?
I'm from Illinois, though.
Cards? Cards? Who's that? There's not a Yankees fan on the panel, is there?
No one's admitting to it.
No one's admitting to it, good. Any Red Sox fans? Okay, well, we'll just, so I have the pleasure to introduce a few people. First, Ginny Lewis, Associate Director of the Texas Association of Regional Councils, which administers Texas Citizen Corps. And then next, Michelle, correct, hopefully I get these names right, Hennigan is the Homeland Security Program Manager for the Illinois Emergency Management Agency. In this capacity, she oversees Illinois Citizens Corps programs. And next, Matt Brisboy, the Community Preparedness Coordinator for the Newport Beach, California Fire Department. And we have Reverend Norman Fong is the Executive Director of Chinatown Community Development Center in San Francisco. Emily White is the Director of Preparedness for the American Red Cross Bay Area Chapter in San Francisco. Michael Parker is the Captain of the Sheriff's Headquarters Bureau in the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And Boyce Wilson is the Emergency Planner for the Heart of Texas Council on Government Homeland Security Division, located in Waco, Texas, the coordinator of the Heart of Texas Citizen Corps program. And Lou Cassiano, the team coordinator for Hoboken, New Jersey CERT program, and
We know each other.
we met each other just about a year ago during Sandy.
We spent some time
We
together.
spent a bit of time together. And your mother's, what is your mother's last name?
My mother's last name is Serino
Oh,
also.
amazing,
so-
isn't it?
Family members.
Free advertisement, jeez.
So
So-
we'll
so
start,
very
we'll start with Ginny and just go around in a couple of minutes, and then we'll get into a discussion.
Okay, great. Let me just start by saying thank you to the White House for having us all here. It's quite an honor to be part of the Champions of Change panel with such esteemed people from all over the country. And for the past 2 days, we've shared a lot of ideas with one another, not only what you'll hear today, but all the conversations we've had over meals and opportunities to interact. So I'm very appreciative of that, and so thank you for having us. Let me just start by saying that it's very humbling to be selected as a White House Champion of Change. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that this award should be given to the entire state of Texas Citizen Corps team. This is not, although it's an individual award and name recognition, truthfully, all of the volunteers in the state of Texas deserve this award. So I humbly accept it on their behalf. Individuals in Texas come together with community leaders and first responders whenever they are needed. And throughout the past 8 years, I've had the privilege of working with a team of these dedicated volunteers and emergency preparedness professionals through the Texas Citizen Corps program. To provide a little background, I work with the 24 councils of government in Texas, representing 254 counties and more than 268,000 square miles. You think Texas looks big on the map? Come visit us. It'll take you a day and a half to get across. We all work together, coordinating to enhance service and program delivery. As I mentioned, we're by sheer size, topography, diverse population, and vast geography. Coordinating effective and efficient programs is very unique and presents challenges. Councils of government, 24 of them, representing cities and counties across the state, were determined as the delivery mechanism for the important Citizen Corps program. It has been a tremendous year for Citizen Corps in Texas. We have grown the number of school-based Teen CERT programs, community emergency response teams, for those of you out there watching that may not know, started several new community-based CERT programs, and trained more volunteers and program managers. And our volunteers have really demonstrated their work this year, responding to the West plant explosion, the tornadoes in Hood and Parker counties, participating in military drills, flooding in San Antonio, just to name a few. They fill a diverse range of roles. CERT team in Nacogdoches runs cooling and hydration centers at local festivals, including a blueberry festival, fires in West Texas, rehab for first responders, and the list goes on and on. In fact, an interesting fact for all of you, in 2012, the Citizen Corps program volunteers in Texas volunteered 183,700 hours, the equivalent to 90 full-time employees. An estimated dollar value of that time, $4.2 million. That's incredible, and we're extremely proud of that effort in Texas. Some of the things we're also most proud of as a team are partnering to reach audiences that are statistically underserved through our Department of Rehabilitative Services, training deaf and hard of hearing Texans, Spanish-speaking Texans, and stressing the importance to come together to create a plan to and respond to and recover from any event together as neighbors. I would be remiss if I didn't mention a few people who are probably watching online. Regina Chaplin, Julie Martinez, Michael Ada, Carrie Kane, and Penny Reddington, part of the state administrative team back home. We appreciate all of you and all of the work that you do, and on behalf of the volunteers, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Very good.
I'm Michelle Hannikin. I'm with the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, and I've had the privilege of the last 11 and a half years of the existence of Citizen Corps to be the lead for that program in this state. I want to give you a little bit of background. On 9/11, I was 12 days into a job that I had just started working on criminal justice and public safety. I was working in the Illinois governor's office after spending a year as an intern, and it was going to be a new, exciting adventure. was in Chicago due to fly out of a little airport called Meigs Field. And I got off the Metro, and everyone was standing around, and I couldn't figure out what people were standing there for, and they were all watching the TV and looked, and I thought, what a horrible accident that was. I can't believe it. And before my very eyes, the second one happened, and then I knew it wasn't an accident. After trying to fly out of the airport, which of course by that time was unsuccessful, I just sat there watching the city skyline in the city of Chicago, wondering, were we next? What was going to happen? I was a young newlywed. My husband, a trooper with Illinois State Police, would he be involved? I got back home after 3 hours of trying to get out of the city and sat glued to the TV like many of you, 15 hours, watched that television. I felt very inspired about what people were doing to come together, not just first responders, but volunteers alike. The next day I went to work, and all of a sudden we heard a new word, Homeland Security. Those two words had never been used together. It was my area's job now to do Homeland Security. And fortunately in Illinois, we had been planning for an act of terrorism since 1999, but one of the things we really didn't have is a robust community preparedness program. About 3 months later, President Bush at the time started this grassroots effort called Citizen Corps. And each state was a name and point of contact, and I felt really inspired by that. I wanted to step forward to take that role because I felt that we needed a better direction on how to prepare communities and inspire folks, and I jumped right in and haven't looked back since. Today in Illinois, we have 95 local Citizen Corps councils who do a variety of things. Our role at the state level is to really empower people. We give them a menu of options under the Citizen Corps umbrella for individual community preparedness, whether it's the CERT training, exercises, etc. I call it the have it your way approach. We're like Burger King. But I'm pleased to say that we have the stories to tell from the program, but we've invested $6 million in the last 10 years, and of both federal and state money. And like Texas, in a 6-month period, we were able to at least triple the investment in volunteer hours that the feds gave us, and we're grateful for that ability. The other thing I want to tell all of you is that to embrace community preparedness and individual preparedness, we do it at our house. We talk to our kids about it. If we're not willing to walk the walk, we can't really talk the talk, and I think that we can safely say everyone up here is doing that, but I encourage you at the local level and state level to be doing that as well. On behalf of the team from the state of Illinois, and we thank you for everything you've done at the local level. I'm here as your face, but it would be nothing without all of you back in Springfield and across the state. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, the little old city from Newport Beach is going to be following Illinois and Texas, so we're in a little different ballpark here. But on behalf of the Newport Beach Fire Department and its Community Emergency Response Team program, it's a true honor to be here amongst all of these award recipients and to be recognized as a champion of change. The success of our program is really in large part due to the foresight of city leaders who years ago determined that emergency planning and disaster preparedness was going to be a priority in our community. The dedication of the Newport Beach Fire Department and their support, particularly the men and women in our fire and lifeguard departments that risk their lives every day and yet come out night after night to teach our CERT classes and participate in our events, is huge. Our emergency services coordinator has done a wonderful job integrating our volunteers into our emergency management plan. I don't believe you can have an active volunteer program without really integrating your volunteers into your communities and your city's emergency management plan. And most importantly, and the reason that we are all here, and I really wish I could have all 1,000 of my volunteers here today, is the active community emergency response team volunteers that we have in the city of Newport Beach. As Administrator Fugate kind of mentioned, I have 1,000 car salesmen in Newport that go out every day promoting preparedness, and we sell a lot of it in our city. And for a city of 88,000 to have over 5% of our population out there promoting preparedness is really huge. And so I would be remiss to not thank our volunteers who go out and promote it not only within their homes, their neighborhoods, their communities, their businesses, and their schools, but they believe in what they're doing. And so although I may be up here accepting this award on behalf of the city, it really is the 1,000 volunteers that are sitting there, 72-degree weather by the Pacific, probably enjoying themselves, that really should be up here. And so I'd be remiss to not thank them and to really point out that I believe that volunteerism here in the United States is about giving volunteers ownership in what they're doing and giving them really a mission. And I think when you do that and you get them out there, they become a force multiplier that can really benefit your community. And if we can develop a culture of preparedness here in the city of Newport Beach and partner with our residents, I really believe anyone in the United States can. And so it's a real honor to be here. I thank you.
All right, Matt, come on. Okay? Okay, this is your Chinese school lesson for today. If I were to name a word in Chinese for FEMA, it would be, I need help from my youth out there. Dennis and Judy, what's the word for crisis? Ngai gay. Ngai gay. Y'all know this, right? Oh, come on. Ngai means danger, and gay means gateway, opportunity. So every crisis is both a time of devastation and danger, but also of hope. And let me talk about some hope. I think that's why I'm here. I ain't no champion. I think it's the youth that are champions. So some of the youth in Chinatown decided to do something. This started in 2009, right? Right, Judy? All right, good. They decided to approach an area that even sometimes the Department of Building Inspection or the Department of Public Health don't get into as much. These youth decided to go into these single-room occupancy hotels. Half of Chinatown, if you don't know, people are jam-packed tighter than Manhattan in these single rooms. They're living in closet-sized rooms. So a lot of them are not in touch with everything, the word out there. One time I went in there and the lady didn't know what 911 was, and so how to call for help.